This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barchies and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW. Guys, this is I guess it's our first mini-pod. I'm going to say it's our first mini-pod. It's like a bite-sized pod in comparison to what we usually do. It's not like 15 minutes. She'll be here for a little bit. But starting off the news section, Legends of Tomorrow complete series box set is coming, Blu-ray and DVD, which is exciting. I guess not so exciting for the Save Legends of Tomorrow movement. I'm sure they will edit to say seasons 1 through 7. And that will be how they interpret the box set. But it's coming out Tuesday, October 18th.
Look, it's a bittersweet time, obviously. I mean, it's fantastic that the show is getting a complete box set because in this day and age, a lot of them don't. You just get the 7 seasons released separately and you're lucky if you get that. But it's really nice to see a complete box set for Legends of Tomorrow. The artwork's a little interesting. Bebo does not love this one, but it's great to see it. I know the Legends fans will be happy to see a complete box set, but not so happy to see a complete box set because obviously they're still fighting for the 8th season. But I think we kind of knew that if the show ever does come back in some capacity, it wouldn't just be a normal 8th season. So a complete box set's a good way to at least keep spreading the word. And obviously, Legends fans, if you want to show the show's popular, please do purchase it because not every show gets a complete box set in today's day and age. And yes, I will absolutely be buying it.
The cover for the DVDs, at least, does have some of like the famous key art, which is really nice. So I know people are going to have that like displayed. Like for anybody who is going to be on Zoom calls, I know y'all putting them right in the back on the bookshelf to add with the like the hashtag Save Legends of Tomorrow sign right next to it, as you should, that people know. But we're also getting a Tom Swift series DVD. He only has 1 season, so we call it a box set. But I'm excited for it. That one's coming out Tuesday, October 25th. We will see Tom in all his glory in his DVD. And I'm still sad that the show didn't get a 2nd season.
I'll be buying that one. Can't say the same for Legends, but I will be buying Tom Swift. And maybe I'll finally watch episode 9.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh man, it makes me feel nostalgic talking about Tom Swift. It feels like a lifetime ago. But that's one of the ones that's quite surprising. That, well, I mean, on my end of the world, we don't get box sets for new CW shows anymore. So it's cool to hear that a show as short-lived as Tom Swift managed to get a DVD release at least. So, I mean, I hope it gets a second life in home media release.
What if it ends up being a cult classic and it's the CW's next Secret Circle where everyone's still talking about it years later and it's just like, why did you cancel it? Not a good move.
No, absolutely.
I mean, that was my hope after watching the cliffhanger ending.
Yeah.
Like people are going to talk about this and never let them live it down.
And they shouldn't stay on their necks.
Yeah.
And then with the last bit of news, the Winchesters, according to Entertainment Weekly, will have a 13 episode season, which does make me think that they'll finish in time for Superman and Lois to slide right into the Tuesday 8 p.m. slot that they're used to.
It makes sense. I mean, I think the Winchesters are a show that could have worked with a longer season if they are opting for a procedural like Monster of the Week kind of format as well as the overall story. But we did say that there may be a big issue with swapping out the Winchesters with Superman and Lois. So a shorter season on both fronts makes it a lot easier to do that. You have your 13 episodes of season of the Winchesters in the fall, and you swap that out with your 15 episode season of Superman and Lois in the mid-season. I mean, it's a win-win all around when you think about it like that.
I wonder if 13 is the initial order, and depending on ratings or timing, scheduling, they'll get their back 9 and have 22 episodes. I guess we'll see what happens.
We will. I'm hoping that if they do get an additional order, it'll just be like an additional 2 episodes and make it a nice 15, the way they do Superman and Lois seasons. And I say that because not that Winchester doesn't have the range. They totally would be able to have the range. But there's just, when I look at the mid-season schedule, I'm just like, that means we'd have to wait for Superman and Lois to come back, or they're going to be on a weird time. And since they have seniority, I need the Winchesters to bow when they should be bowing.
I know the culture's kind of shifted now that people are like, bring back 22 episode seasons, bring back the long orders, even though it feels like a few years ago they were like really loving the short seasons. Um, I would love a long season of Winchesters, but I do think it's kind of smart for the CW in this uncharted territory to take it slow.
Mm-hmm. It lets the shows bye, leaving the fans wanting more instead of sticking around too long. Because let's be honest, even if a show's performing well, the longer it's on, the more the ratings will drop. So a shorter season would prevent that from happening.
And it can like lead to overexposure, oversaturation. We've seen it happen with Riverdale. Like, I don't know if anybody really wanted those long seasons, but we got them because of, that's how the business works. But yeah, we'll see what happens with the Winchesters.
We will. And I think so 13, 15, maybe 18, 15 at the most for me. I just don't want it to be Superman almost had 15, right, for season 2. And we were still with them for the longest time because of all of those breaks.
Exactly.
Not that I don't love Clark in Lois's time, but I don't want that to happen with the Winchesters.
I know. I feel like 15 can be a sweet spot when it's used right. The breaks absolutely did not benefit that season. Hopefully, with the Winchesters being on in the fall, we won't have to deal with that because they may want to get it off before Christmas, we'll say, or the weeks after Christmas. So that gives them less time to play with. But 13 to 15 would be a nice sweet spot for a first season.
For sure. In keeping on the topic of superheroes, we're going to launch right in to what we're watching. How was Stargirl?
Wow. It's an interesting time in Blue Valley, but I think Blue Valley might have had a new visitor this week. Reed,
I watched this episode.
Did you? Oh, what did you think?
I dropped by to, and see what the vibes are. I don't know that I followed the story completely, and that's to be expected because it was completely out of context, but I did really enjoy the atmosphere. It was different than I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, just because I haven't interacted with the show beyond what Michael has talked about on the podcast and me seeing still photos. I don't think I've seen like a trailer or anything. But for me, this is my like one episode middle of the series review. It gave me like at least this episode reminded me a lot of a Disney Channel original movie. And I mean that in the most complimentary way possible, because some of those DCOMs deserved Oscars. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. It just had like, there was a lot of fun. The music had a lot of like whimsy to it. But there was still a lot of like, obviously it's a drama. There's a lot of vulnerability, and like, you were right. This episode had a lot of character moments, which I enjoyed seeing. But yeah, that's kind of like, that was my takeaway. I was like, this is kind of like fun, and it felt young, but not in like a talking down to you kind of way. It felt like, I don't know. It just felt very like nostalgic. I don't know.
I'm so happy. I cannot believe you said that you think it feels like a Disney movie, because I'm pretty sure I'm on record on this podcast pitching the show to Sabrina, like in our Arrowverse episode months ago, saying that Stargirl to me is like a Disney Channel superhero movie. So it's amazing that you picked up on that. This was a more quieter episode with last week was a very action-packed one with obviously the supermarket showdown that everyone's been talking about since. There will be more action obviously later in the season. This was very much like that quiet moment, and this is an interesting one for you to watch first, because while of course the murder mystery was center of it, it wasn't quite as central as some of the previous episodes. So there was more of the overarching show's story that maybe wouldn't have been as easy to follow, like the ISA versus JSA stuff, the Cameron stuff as well.
Freeze Boy was going through it this one.
I'm so glad I matched him, because he usually has quite like maybe one or two scenes an episode, but this felt like his big episode.
He got the opening, right?
Yep. The snow globe that he froze and then smashed. So he didn't have that many scenes, but it definitely felt like he was the focus of this episode. Ever since Starman got tossed into the air and then dropped on the trailer, that was kind of like the cliffhanger from the previous episode. So this one was all about Courtney and the JSA figuring out who attacked Starman, because obviously it's the same person who killed the gambler, and we don't know who that is. So that investigation played a lot into it, and they found some new evidence. The episode is called The Evidence. So they found some new evidence, which was non-human DNA at the crime scene. And now they have managed to deduce that they think it might be Dragon King. And for anyone who's unaware, Dragon King was one of the members of the Injustice Society. He was one of the many villains in season 1. And Cindy is his daughter. And he experimented on her something serious. She had lived a terrible life, and that's why she's a very, very flawed and sadistic kind of character. But Cindy ended up killing him in the end of season 1 when she broke out of the dungeon he was keeping her in. And now everyone's like, is Dragon King back? Could he have survived Cindy's attack? Is he back for Cindy? Is Cindy working with him? So he's the new suspect at the moment. But that shocking cliffhanger, our girl is not beating the allegations.
Oh yeah, I just remembered what happened.
Yeah. So Cindy was in maybe all of 2 scenes in this episode, but each scene counted. When they noticed the non-human DNA at the crime scene, I think it was the only JSA scene in the whole episode. They were all costumed up. Cindy was standing there, and you could see she had a more serious look on her face when they found the non-human DNA. And then at the very end of the episode, you could see like things happening with her arm. It was like being displaced. Yep. And she ripped the clothing down or the bandage down, and you saw that she has like scales, like lizard scales, exactly like her father. So you're like, was it Dragon King's DNA or was it Cindy's DNA?
No.
They spotted at the crime scene. So nope, Cindy's not beating the allegations anytime soon. But yeah, that was kind of it as far as the investigation goes. It was like I said, a more character-driven one. The story didn't play into it as much this time. So there was a lot of quieter moments, like Courtney being distraught over Starman's attack, then Starman waking up, and his old friend returned, the original Dr. Midnight from the original JSA, and that made Starman realize that Dr. Midnight had passed his mantle on to Beth in the new JSA, and he was happy about that. And that made Starman realize, why am I sharing the staff with Courtney? Why aren't I doing the same thing? I'm here trying to relive my glory days while Stargirl's doing a pretty darn good job, and I'm actually hindering her progress. So it was a really like reflective moment for Starman. Like, is he the legend that stayed too long and now he's out of shape but no longer can do what he used to do? It's definitely like that kind of returning veteran kind of vibe, that are their glory days behind them and are they stuck trying to relive them? We've seen it in so many TV shows. I'm actually shocked Stargirl decided to go down that route, but it's quite poignant because Starman's been a loose cannon since he came back. He's destroying everything. He's creating so much tension and drama. So it was a very poignant story for Starman, and I think you got to relate to him more this time. And I'm trying to think then, the neighbors, I'm sure both of them were fun characters. I can't wait to hear Reed's thoughts on them. The Croc showed up, but they were in separate scenes this time. Lawrence showed up in the bunker and sat and watched a movie with Starman and Pat.
Yeah, they had boy time.
Yeah, they did. He did. Yeah, they bonded. Last week, Starman was destroying the supermarket with them in it, but this time they were sitting watching a movie together. And I think that made Starman realize, because he used to be Lawrence used to be the villain sportsmaster, and now even he's retired and he's moving on. He's turning over a new leaf, and Starman's like, everyone I knew from those days have moved on with their lives and are doing something new and letting the next generation take care of it. But meanwhile, I'm still stuck here trying to be Starman, relive my glory days. So again, poignant arc for Starman, but they used some of the show's most eccentric characters to get it across. Meanwhile, Lawrence's wife, Paula, showed up at Barbara's work. And so remember I said Barbara was having a tough time with her manager. He was turning down all her proposals. And then Paula threatened the manager. Well, this week, the manager's all like, yes, Barbara, that proposal can go through. You're doing great, Babs. Absolutely. So he's really like nervous and angsty around her. And it turns out because it was that Paula threatened her. But Paula also got Courtney's mom the most unusual gift. I think that just highlighted the unusual dynamic between them. And Barbara just didn't know how to thank her. And I mean, again, it was just one scene, but I feel like they're all really important character moments because it really furthers each of the dynamics. And as I said, the season subtitled Frenemies, that you really get to see that. But yeah, that's basically all that was in the murder mystery story. The big story this week was the Cameron and Courtney thing. And Courtney now knows Cameron has ice powers because he couldn't control himself around her and ended up freezing the entire art room. There were icicles hanging everywhere. I'm resisting making a Mr. Freeze pun, but I'm not going to do it. But it's a cold town. It didn't work. What do you call it? And then, but Courtney promised to help Cameron through it. And
are they a thing?
That's the thing. This is the most long-winded, well-told story for 3 seasons. We've been waiting on anything to happen.
You're joking.
Yeah.
So it's a slow burn.
Has she dated anybody? Is there
no, this is her first kind of relationship on the show.
I mean, I kind of appreciate that, where they kind of put that on the back burner and let her be herself and be a superhero.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they told it really well. I know some people are getting bored because it's taking too long to happen, but I think they're doing it really well because it's played second fiddle to the main story, which a lot of the stuff in the show should. But now that there's a real reason for Cameron to step front and center, it's really starting to blossom at probably the very wrong time because there is history there that's going to affect the relationship. And I've mentioned before, Cameron's nickname is Icicle Jr. because his father was Icicle. His father was the leader of the JSA, and Cameron's grandparents are low-key terrifying, and they want to raise their grandson with the exact same ideals of his father. So they're putting all this propaganda into him about how his father was a good man, how he only had the best for the town, and Cameron doesn't know anything about superheroes, about the Injustice Society, about Stargirl, about any of that. So he's all like, how do you know so much about this, Courtney? And she's all like, I don't know. So that's kind of dynamic going forward. And then in the end, they had that beautiful scene in the gazebo where I think the grandparents were trying to get him to focus on his anger, and that was making his powers unpredictable. And Courtney, since Cameron's an artist, Courtney said, focus on expressing yourself through your art, exactly like you would when you are doing art. So he did. He focused on what he loved. He focused on his passions and what he loved. Courtney just happened to be standing right in front of him. And then he let out a snowstorm, so to speak, again. And it just turned into the most beautiful snowfall. And the two of them had a moment. They both looked up how magical it was. He was like, you're magical too. And then they both shared that beautifully shot slow motion kiss. I mean, 3 seasons waiting on that. I talked about how Stargirl shoots its fight scenes. Beautifully shot scene, just with the top down, the gazebo coming around to them, and then slowly panning up as they held hands and then shared that kiss. And it was just like, Cameron's experienced so much misery over the last 3 seasons. It was nice to see him have that lovely moment of just peace, and it was Courtney that inspired it. But what really makes things interesting is the JSA is responsible for Cameron's father's death, and he doesn't know that yet. So he doesn't know anything about Stargirl, the JSA, the ISA, any of that.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, does everybody know that she's Stargirl, or is it just a few people?
No, just a few people. The show has basically been very coy about superheroes. No one in Blue Valley knows superheroes exist, so I don't know how they're moving around doing these things in the shadows.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when they came out of that closet and all the keys came out and they just like walked away, I was like, no one's gonna ask questions about why that door just exploded with a bunch of keys.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I think Blue Valley is supposed to be such a strange, cheery time that everyone's weird that nobody asks questions, but I don't think they realized it's so weird that superheroes and supervillains exist yet. And
it sounds like Smallville, like the original Smallville. Does anybody have a wall of weird?
No, I don't think they do. They really should by now. Especially after the ISA tried to mind control them all in season 1, and nobody asked questions about that. But funnily, you should bring up that scene with the keys in it. One of those fellas, the one who made his friend wish with the pen, he's Courtney's brother or step brother, and he was actually the one who ran over Icicle in the season 1 finale that killed Cameron's father. So it was a very humorously shot scene at the very end. At the very end of the finale, Icicle started icing up and turned himself into like an ice sculpture, and Mike just drove through him and shattered him into thousands of pieces. And it was like, does this mean I get to join the JSA? It was a really humorous scene, but ever since they've really played on. Mike did what he had to do to save his family, but he's still like 12 or 13, and he actually killed someone. So that's kind of been playing on him. So I think now Courtney's going to have to find out a way to protect Mike from Cameron when he eventually finds out that it was Mike and the JSA that killed his father. So I think that's going to be the murder mystery is very much at the center of the story, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Icicle Junior story ends up taking center focus as we head towards the finale. Because, you know, the murder mystery is a very much a season story, whereas the Cameron stuff's very much show story. So I think it'll take center stage as it goes on. Or maybe it'll set up season 4, manifesting season 4. We'll say. But yeah, it was a very quiet episode. My teaser for episode 5 is you're going to see more of Courtney and Cameron, of course. I don't know if you saw the trailer, Reed, after it aired. It very much played into Courtney is going to be distracted by helping Cameron. And now that Starman has officially accepted, Pat talked Starman into taking the mantle back. So he has a costume now, while Courtney is busy with Cameron. The JSA is going to need a new leader. So Starman decides to take the young uns for an adventure through the sewers to see if they can find Dragon King. But as the trailer implies, Starman still has rage issues, and the young JSA is going to be like, Starman's great and all, but he got issues. So that's going to make Courtney feel very much torn between helping Cameron or going back to her duty as Stargirl, as the leader of the JSA. And again, I think that'll play into then the rest of the season. Who is the leader of the JSA, Starman or Stargirl? So there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of drama, and there is a lot of infighting, and I think that will carry on. The issue is that there is no episode of Stargirl next week, so we're going to have to wait 2 weeks because for some random reason the CW is taking a 1 week hiatus, I think, so that it can officially launch its fall schedule and then add Stargirl back to the pack. So Wednesday, October 5th at 8 p.m. Tune in to Stargirl season 3, episode 5. It's a good one. The Thief, I think it's called. But yes, I've rambled far too much. That was a good episode, a more character-centric episode, and I will say that things will pick up yet again from here on. This was the calm after the storm, but it was also very much the calm before the storm. And I think Cindy's going to find herself at the heart of that storm going forward.
Cindy.
I still believe her.
Yeah,
I'm holding out hope. I think this is a red herring. She is not my girl, but I think if I watched it, she would end up being my girl, and I want her to beat the allegations. I do.
Me too. What did you think of her, Reed? Was she as sassy as we predicted? Was she?
I feel like I didn't get a lot of her. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I honestly, I also didn't know who was who for a hot minute while watching. So it took me a minute to get my bearings. I don't think I realized who she was until the end. So, I mean, there's that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It all makes sense. Yeah, there was a very Cindy light episode, but like I said, I think she'll find herself at the heart of it again going forward, especially now that she seems to be developing lizard skin like her father.
Lizard skin.
Imagine if I had said that last week when you hadn't seen the episode.
We need somebody to clip out some of our weirdest lines, just like the CW spiral out of context.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd actually be wild because their CW shows are weird.
Yeah,
very much so, and they thrive on it.
They do. Speaking of weird, Nancy Drew. My first thought when watching Nancy Drew was, we just presented this idea, and then here we are.
Right? I was flipping out.
Like, so Nancy died.
Right.
She died for a hot sec. I couldn't believe it. While it was happening, she was walking toward the light. I was like, oh my God, is she going to see her mom? Like, did I really predict that so soon? I didn't want to predict it at all, to be honest. It did not happen. She did not see her mom in the northeastern corner of heaven.
But she did see someone else on her way to the light.
Yeah,
she did. There were a lot of like subtle jump scares in this one of like things behind her and around her. But I'm curious to know, like, what was it? Dead Lucy that she was inching towards? Okay. Oh my gosh.
Which I loved because she's back.
Yeah. We missed you, Dead Lucy.
Yeah. She's so terrifying, and yet she feels like a like a guardian in some way, which is why Nancy being like, I can't find her. And she's like, put all the ghost traps around the house so she could
Yeah.
catch Lucy was very cute.
Yeah. And I mean, not to jump right to the end, but when Nancy finally did the thing that she had been avoiding all episode, the fact that when she said, yes, I'm going to do this, dead Lucy then just sucked herself away through the doorway, like, that's my girl, Nancy, you do it. That was really nice.
But this episode was a continuation of Nancy realizing how much of a wall she puts up, which is funny because she still put the wall up. Like her dad from jail was he calling her twice a day, trying to get her on the line? I know it's at least once. He's using all of his call time to get in contact with her, and she's like, he's going to hate me, and I'm like, he's trying to call you. It's been 14 days. Pick up the phone.
It did a very good like character swap between the two, because he wouldn't talk to her or anyone when he was arrested, and you're like, oh, what's the dynamic here? Has this just destroyed the recently repaired friendship or the kinship? And now all of a sudden she won't talk to him, but it's not over what he did, it's the guilt that she feels. And again, I feel like the show has done such a great job of, even episodes that aren't always Nancy centric, she always has a great character moment or journey throughout them, and this one was absolutely no different than that.
Sure. And I like that that everyone was kind of weird around her.
Mm-hmm.
Like usually everyone's kind of fine, but they didn't know how to talk to her. And so they're like, it's fine, it's fine. It's fine. You forgot the cake. It's fine. You forgot the party, the day he was coming back, the flowers, everything is fine. And it's not.
Yeah, they were really forgiving with her after
They
everything.
were. Well, because her dad's in jail. So, I mean.
Yeah. I'm like, my brain is swirling with all of that whole storyline with her dad in jail. I'm like, I don't know what to think.
Yeah, but
It's
it matches
hard to
because she
like,
doesn't.
yeah, it's hard to like land on a thought for that storyline. Because at one end, I'm like, oh, she feels guilty. And the other end, I'm like, but she's being selfish, not answering his calls. Because like, it's only hurting him more. I was like, I don't know. Nancy, I don't know what to think yet.
And it was also been interesting is that while this is definitely, again, Nancy was at the heart of this episode and her father was at the heart of this episode, this was very much felt like the one where the Drew crew was kind of born, like the dynamic, because it was definitely, it felt like, if you could call it something, it would be Nancy Drew and the Drew crew, because they were as important to this episode, if not even more important than she was. Because we've said every single episode, she's got such a quality that she puts up walls and ignores people. And yes, she learns her lesson on an episodic basis, but I feel like this was the real moment where she learned the definitive lesson going forward, that these people will be there for her regardless of whether she wants them to be or not. And the fact that like, the great Nancy Drew, so cool to see her be like the town's hero now, the hero of Horseshoe Bay. But the great Nancy Drew actually failed. She missed the signs that the rest of the team picked up, and that's okay. Every hero needs their backup from time to time, and I think that was imperative to her to make her realize that if it hadn't been for them, she actually would have stayed dead. She would have been gone. She lost this mission, and I think that's probably my favorite thing about the episode, and that every character had their own purpose this time around, and she realized that, because even if not every one of them helped him in this episode, like Bess, for example, had her own storyline in this episode. Bess has helped her before over the years. Nancy's helped Bess, or over the seasons. Bess has helped Nancy over the season, and vice versa. It's been such a working friendship, and I think Nancy realized now that these aren't just her colleagues, these aren't just her co-workers as far as solving murders goes. These are her friends, and I think that's still such a learning game for her, and she's starting to figure it out.
You know, when Bess was doting on her at the end and she was like, you don't need to do this. And Bess was like, I want to, like, leave me alone. And then she finally just like accepted it. It's hard, I think, for Nancy to accept love. And I think we've seen reasons why. And she's still kind of learning to let it in. Can I just say, though, that this episode, I think, it's always really effective in its suspense, but when the show puts its lead in so much danger, like I was terrified, like I was like so tense when I was like, oh my god, is she gonna die? And like, even though I know like the character's name is in the title of the show, there's still 2 more seasons and 1 on the way. I'm like, I know she's not really going to die, but I was still like terrified for her. And I think that's really rare for a show to do that as well as it did. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I was like so in it and like terrified for her. But I think that it can be kind of gimmicky sometimes in shows where they're constantly putting their main characters in danger, and you're like, there's no possible way that they can kill these characters. Like, it's just not going to happen. But the way that they pulled it off in this episode, I thought was super well done, because I was just on the edge of my seat. Actually, I was in bed watching it, and I was just like so tense. But I thought it was so well done.
Yeah,
It was.
She was human. I think that's the most important thing. You see so many shows that obviously have these super powered heroes or whatever. And of course, when you're in those kind of predicaments, their life will be in danger or whatever, but they're still super at the end of the day. This episode did such a great job of highlighting that even in spite of her heroic reputation as the hero of Horseshoe Bay, Nancy Drew was inherently human, and her life hung in the balance. She made some flawed decisions that got her into the situation in the first place. I think the humanity of it all is why I love this episode. And I think that's why it really highlighted those stakes that Reed was talking about, that you really just felt like she could die, even though you kind of knew she wouldn't. For a brief few minutes, you were like, are we actually going here?
It's because when you have the Kennedys acting paired with the choice the writers made of having you hear Nancy's story about how she failed her driver's test and what her dad did to make her feel better, and how he taught her that to fail is human. And then she slowly realizes that I failed. Like, I just failed here and now I'm dying. Plus the way her voice gets tiny when she says she doesn't want to die. And you're like, I know my heart was beating fast when like Nick and George were trying to figure it out. I was like, I need you to figure it out faster. And like, especially when you cut to Ace, he was like, yes, got the doors open. I was like, okay, but save Nancy. Like, the doors open. Let's go get Nancy. And when Nick carried her out of there, I'm like, y'all move. We have to go. And I love that they didn't even let you breathe even after she leaves the room, because you have to find the antidote. But I do love that Nancy gave them the clue by having figured out that it was on the ring.
Just seconds from dying, she is able to pull the ring off of that person's finger. And I'm like, how? I love her.
She's amazing. Like, just to still be in fear of her life and still just as calculating and trying to figure it out at the same time.
Can I bring up another theory that I have that just popped up in this episode that I kind of wish I was keeping track of in the previous 9? Okay, so when she goes into the abandoned school, right? She's alone and she has her beanie on. And then when she sees the rest of them come in, I think it was just George, Nick, and Ace, right? And they're like, we're your friends, we're doing it too. She immediately whips the beanie off. And I'm like, is this a visual motif where whenever she's like alone, she has the beanie on, and then when she like opens herself up to like having help or like whatever it is, the beanie's off? Or am I thinking way too far into this?
No, I think you're correct, because in the first episode, I think when she's talking, Nick finds her when she's staked outside of Ryan Hudson's house. It's the branch snatches her beanie off. The tree. And then I think she take her beanie off when her dad arrives at the site to go looking to see where the little girl was.
I was trying to remember that and I couldn't remember.
I think you're onto something. I do think she removes it, like it comes off her head whenever one of them decides to come on the adventure with her.
So I'm gonna predict that eventually the beanie stops making appearances in future seasons. Yes. She doesn't need it anymore. The security blanket is gone.
The security blanket her mom knit her because it's made of cashmere. Yeah, because I remember that line.
Got chills. So now, in addition to Ship Watch, we have Beanie Watch.
Yes. Speaking of Ship Watch, though, all 3 of Nancy's men were in this episode.
I still don't trust Owen. I don't trust him.
It's understandable. He was being weird.
He came into Best no receipts. He's like, we're first cousins. Best innocent sweetheart is just like, yeah, we're let's get cake, champagne. We're cousins. I'm a Marvin, and I'm like, girl, where's the material?
Yeah. I felt like for being such, again, character moment, for being such a big part of her story, that was very much swept under the rug for the episode of the week story. And I don't think that was bad by any means. I think that was very much intentional. So it feels like we're definitely going back to it at some point. Considering the fact in the previous episode, we thought Owen almost didn't want her to be a cousin, to now suddenly being so accepting of the fact, oh yeah, you're a cousin, no big deal. Is there more to it than that? Does he have an agenda? Do the Marvins have an agenda? What is going on here?
There's gotta be. He lulled us into a false sense of comfort with just like joining the Drew crew and whatever their side mission was with the Hudsons. That I don't know. My rule with the show is that the only men that I trust are Nick and Ace. That's it. I'm sorry.
It's a good rule.
That's a good rule, yeah.
Until proven otherwise, it's only Nick and Ace for me.
Yeah, because Owen was like calm. Like Nick does walk into the frame when he starts asking about the Roman coins and Nick takes responsibility for them melting. I also love how he's like immediately protective of Bess. He's like, so why are you here? I mean, some of that is still the jealousy about Nancy, but the other part is he just does not care for Owen. And I think he should stay on that track, like until Owen proves himself, because he is around all the time for what? Like I get
bringing
like
Nancy dinner. Like I'm not buying it, dude.
Yeah, he feels like there's a lot of open threads with him. Like he showed up for the start of the Hudson storyline in that episode, and then that was never. It's not that it wasn't followed through on, but you didn't get the answer you'd expect, and then it was quickly dropped. He showed up at Nancy's house with dinner, and then that was quickly dropped for the story. So I definitely feel like this is very much intentional. They're putting Owen everywhere to make us think a lot of things, but I definitely think there's more to him than that. And the best one of all stuck out because they invested so much in the story and then invested so little in this episode, and there has to be more to it than that.
There just has to be. And the plan, he just goes along with the plan that Bess comes up with, which she's the cutest, because walking out of that conversation between Ryan and George, and she's like, I can't, I'm just, don't mind me. And she's like looking for whatever she's looking
the
for.
most absurdly large star pickles. She's like, oh, found it. And George is like, whatever, you need to do it.
I know. And it's like, I do wonder, like, Bess, what did you think about Ryan and George? I can't remember does everyone know now about them? I know Nancy knew, and they did like possess George, kissed him, but I don't remember if Bess was around when that happened. Well, she knows now, I guess, because what man walks into the office like that?
And he was speaking loudly.
Yeah.
He like wasn't trying to hide it, even though she was in the room. She was on her Nancy shtick with trying to like pocket information. She did not do it subtly.
Just so great. But then the plan doesn't work out because Ryan I think is protecting them from his mom, who her weird comment about, I wonder if she learned from that accident. And I was like, so you cut the brakes then? Because who says that when someone has woken up in the hospital?
Yeah, I feel like Ryan's definitely going to be the character. It's funny because he was the one we all had suspicion with at the start. Now it feels like he'll be that kind of like anti-hero, sounds cliche, but that one that walks the line between both good and bad, but they're not an inherently good person, but they're not an inherently bad person, and he's trying to be better. And it would be really interesting if he turns out by the end of the season to be a better character than Owen is, because obviously you have the whole Marvin versus Hudson kind of rivalry in the background, and it's very much geared towards the Marvin side at the moment, but I'm not sure it will. The Hudsons are horrible, but I mean, I'm not sure it will not be geared towards that way at the end. I do think Ryan will come out of this looking better than Owen, but that's just a theory because I think we're supposed to be suspicious of Owen at this point.
For sure.
I don't know. Are we, or do we?
What?
Are we supposed to be suspicious of Owen, or do we just have like TV trust issues?
I think we're supposed to be suspicious of Owen. There are too many like camera cuts to him looking weird about something that's said.
The fact that we went from one extreme in the last episode, again, totally cautious about Bess, to being totally cheery about Bess. I believe if you weren't cautious about him before, you absolutely would be now. Because it was what
I want to know is though, did Bess get the results of her test? Because they both ran tests.
Yeah.
I'm like, Bess, girl, did 23andMe email you? Like, what happened?
Unless she's still waiting, and that's the shoe that's gonna drop. She'll probably ignore it because she already knows. And Ace will probably read it, or Nancy, because Nancy's nosy. And probably would want some information on Owen, and then it'll come up negative, I'm assuming, or they're might be closer in relation than she thought. I don't know. We'll see.
I love that Nancy just knows everyone's tea. That just reminded me of that. Like she knows she knows that Bess has an accent that hasn't reappeared yet, that I'm like eager to hear again. I don't know if it ever comes back, but she knows she's got everyone's number.
She does. And now she has like Ace's dad's number. We met that man in the episode.
Loved seeing more of Ace's life.
Same.
I loved it. It was high time.
It was.
Not to make a stoner pun on Ace.
But I also love like there's so much character in the episode about him and his father. Like when he says, so when you meet the captain, and Nancy's like, you call your dad the captain? He's like, just go with it, Nancy. He calls his dad the captain. Let's go into this house. And he's like, it's what did he say? It's a bit of a war zone in the house. Mm-hmm. And she's like, it looks like regular suburbia. And it's like, just leave him be. He knows what's coming in his house.
Nancy's like, coming from mess, this looks normal.
Yes. Oh, I also like the signing, his and the bit of backstory about how his dad lost his hearing, and poor Ace trying to like, well, his dad can read lips, but also when he was a little frustrated, he would try to sign, but he can only sign with one hand. So he was trying to get the point across, like, let me investigate without you putting your input into it. I can do this.
I loved how Nancy was she approached it very un-Nancy like she walks into that police station like a bull in china shop. She's like, I own this place, but she was very like timid around Ace's dad, her future father-in-law. I'm just gonna manifest it. But yeah, like when she asked him like, can we try to solve the cipher together, I was like, that was so sweet, Nancy. Like you really approached that with care that you don't normally take.
It was funny though that like she solved it in like an hour just by putting the pictures
she was just
together.
like sitting there and was like, these are weird pictures, flops them over together for no reason.
No, and I feel like the dynamic, of course, the Nancy and Ace's father dynamic was lovely, but also the dynamic between Ace and his father, that was such an endearing relationship throughout the whole episode, and it was just nice. Not that I don't think Ace ever didn't have his father's approval, but I feel like that you did a good job in the end. It was just such a like lovely, quiet moment as far as Ace goes. And I'm totally with Reed on that. It was lovely just to see more of his backstory, because we always said he's kind of the mysterious. He's been the chauffeur. He's been the waiter. He's always in the background of the main stories. And it was nice to see him directly involved, especially after off the back of 2 or 3 episodes without him actually being in them. Mm-hmm.
And we felt that absence actually, because when he came back, I was like, I missed you. Hi, what are we doing this episode?
I know, but did the newspaper have to drag him like that? I mean, I know he's a dishwasher, but it was like local dishwasher. Come on.
I know, they could have done cop's son, like retired cop's son is a hero or something.
He was so proud of it though, still, my sweet prince.
I know though, like the OG Ace and Nancy shippers put those 2 newspapers together, and it was like proof that one day it will be these 2.
But I feel like the ship watch, like the sale was up because Nancy and Ace, as soon as they're reunited, they have a moment where they both like apologize to each other. And I immediately was like, I don't know why you're apologizing to each other, but I'm appreciating this moment. And they just kept having these shared moments, like even in the end when they all left Nancy's house, which by the way, I was like, Nancy, why don't you want someone to stay with you? Beside the point. She said goodnight to Ace first, and they had there was like this like tension in the air. And I was like, I'm picking up on it. I don't know if they're picking up on it, but there's something happening. And then he leaves and she says goodnight to Nick. I'm curious to hear both of your thoughts, but especially Sabrina's about Shipwatch.
I am taking all the juice and crumbs that I could possibly get while they still exist. It was funny that to go back to when Nick and Nancy first see each other again, it parallels her same interaction with Nick. it's got the same amount of tension in it. And she already told Nick how to use what he's asking me, and then does it, and then immediately her phone rings. I was like, but why does when Ace asks you how are you, it feel a little different? Like you're actually going to answer instead of saying someone. People are keep asking you that. Then they did the same thing at the end with the goodbyes, where it's similar, but like there's tension with Nancy and Ace, and there's tension with Nancy and Nick, but Nick immediately shuts it down. Now he has a wall. Now that might be because he had like a really great scare today, and he was all like up on her and was nervous, and I was like, he still loves her. And I knew it's only been like a few days, so I know that was still true. But is he gonna immediately shut down, or are we gonna have a talk? He immediately shuts down after being that emotional, which, you know what, fair, fine. The relationship is over. You want it to be over, but I saw that panicked far more than George did. And I think Nancy and Ace, the flag is up. The flag is up. It's a slow burn though. I could see it being a slow burn. By the way, they had awkwardness tension because the last thing she said to him was that she didn't want to see him. Remember,
that's right.
He lied. He withheld information, and she got upset about it, and then
That's when they were in like the warehouse at the Claw, and he was like, "I'm gonna fix this."
That's right.
Is that the scene?
Yeah, that's the scene. And then she feels guilty.
Was in the fact that he got into the car with Laura and then tried to record I think he was trying to prove himself to Nancy to make up for it, because wasn't he recording Laura in the car, and then there was the crash and they never made up for that. But no, totally agree. As soon as S returned, there was definitely like that moment, and then I think it kind of, I remembered about that weird dynamic between them before, over where he said, "I'm going to fix this," but I was like, hold on a minute, they're really, really, really playing this feels like out of nowhere, because they've had a couple of moments here and there. But this episode, I totally agree. It felt like she had moments with all three of the men in her life, and that may have been intentional to be like a turning point, because you had the Ace moments, you had the Owen moments, and the one where he showed up at her house still feels like it came out of nowhere. So I feel like maybe they're important character moments to make us feel one way about Owen when we maybe should be feeling the other way. But I think probably most pivotal of them all was the final Nick and Nancy scene, because I think that was it now, because this episode kind of made it feel like, could they rekindle that? Because there's still obviously something there between them. But I think obviously his concern over Nancy's life, and then how he held on to her so tightly when she came back to life, and then the fact that he was the last one, he stuck around. It felt like she had finally maybe learned her lesson to open up to people more, and then that's when he put up the walls, because he was like, that's what friends do. I think that was her turning point, where she was like, okay, this is what I can do with people, and he was like, no, we're not doing that again. So it was, if she'd learned that lesson 3 or 4 episodes ago, there would have been a future for them. But I feel like this episode was designed to make us wonder who is the man in Nancy's life. But by doing so, it also took Nick out of the equation once and for all. And again, like, I'm just literally talking about a Stargirl 3-season slow burn romance. I can do this with Nick or Nancy and S. I can do this. But I think right now it's going to pivot to Owen, and maybe that's when we'll find out what is there behind Owen's smile. Is there darkness? Is there genuineness, or is he actually someone she needs to put her Nancy Drew cap on and investigate? I think maybe he'll be will he be the danger right beneath her nose that she didn't say? We'll have to say. But I do think of all the men in her life, Owen might be the next path she follows.
That's a good point. From my perspective, it feels like Owen is bouncing checks. Like she's not doing it. But I think you're right. I think she does want to like kind of keep him positioned on the outskirts, and I think it could be a pivotal relationship for her, just to like, if anything with Bess does come to light, Nancy can be the one to slip in, because she has a good like rapport with Owen. She can kind of use that to her advantage to like free Bess or whatever. For me, the Nick stuff was kind of giving like closure, especially when they brought her back to life. It was very clear to me that why maybe it's in retrospect, knowing what I know what happens in this series, I was taking into account that it was Nancy, Nick, and George, and he's so excited. He like wraps his arms around Nancy when she comes back to life. And then immediately after, he grabs George's hand. And I don't think anything in that scene, for me at least, this is my reading, was romantic. I think he was just excited that Nancy was back. And there, even though they may not be in love, there is still love there, obviously. But he was also sharing that moment with George by grabbing her hand. And then even at the end, when he does put that wall up with Nancy, I feel like part of me was like, good for you. Like, put that boundary there. Like, don't reopen old wounds. Like, you deserve that for you. Like, that relationship was not good for you, Nick. Like, put that boundary up and like do that. As much as it, like, I do kind of wish, like, we're only 10 episodes into the season. I kind of wish there was more Nick and Nancy content. But yeah, it's really interesting to like kind of, Nancy's love life hasn't really been super explicit, not in like a explicit in like a parent, I guess. Not explicit in like, you know, not that kind of explicit. So just picking up on these like small character moments, it's really another thrilling part of this show and this journey.
It is, because the to highlight the closure part, she literally closes the door behind him and then when she turns around on the door and she says, I failed. So, well, her voiceover says I failed, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's the end. I loved them while they were here. I mean, they'll have moments and whatnot. It'll just be in the realm of platonic, which is fine. But I also like, did you guys pick up on the fact that Ace does something opposite to Nick in terms of his interactions with Nancy? He's very forceful in being like, we are your friends, we're going to be here. It's always him doing that. Nick always asked. Ace isn't asking, he's just doing. And Nancy is responding to that more because she just has to go forward. It's not one of those things where she has to disappoint someone. Ace isn't going to be disappointed because this is the thing that we're doing. So either get on board or, you know, you'll be left behind. sort of thing. And it's
giving
working.
Nancy options isn't always the best option.
And he doesn't. So that might be the dynamic she needs in her life.
There's definitely something with Ace that she responds to, just not even like on a romantic level. Like, we see all of her interactions one-on-one with each of these characters, probably the most out of any other character. So we see like what kind of dynamic she responds to, and there's something that she really picks up on with Ace and George too. Like, they're two presences in her life that are like very, I mean, George is a little bit more aggressive in her approach to friendship, which I think a lot of people need. Whereas like with Bess, Nancy takes on like a more, I don't want to say maternal, but like it is a little bit more maternal. We see her like when Ace was in the hospital, she's the one that comforts Bess. And when Bess is comforting Nancy in this episode, Nancy's the one to like comfort her. So like we see all these different dynamics with them. And there's just so much in this show to like pick up in the little moments.
There is. It's so nice. I will say though that I am officially going to lay my flowers on the grave of Truson as a ship. Because it just definitely felt final. I did see a pic though on the press site that has me asking some questions, and I don't know if it's from I won't give away what episode it is, but I saw the picture and I was like, I know you're not circling back because I already know that you two don't make it. So I don't know what's happening here, but I would like to get all the information once we get to that episode.
Ooh, maybe in the run up to like Nace going official, they need to have like a moment.
That would be interesting if they had like a bench moment where they discuss it. Don't get our hopes up, y'all, though. I know Nace is the ship, and people really like Fanson. That's what we were told, that the ship name for Nick and George's, it's Fanson, which means that you will have a fire that happens in the fandom if you do the two big fandom ships, and then by the end it's Nick and Nancy. like serious finale, Nick and Nancy right off into the sunset together. Like the internet will be on fire. So yeah, don't tease too much, right? I would love it, but don't tease too much.
Was there I'm struggling to remember now, was there like a cliffhanger, or was that was just Nancy calling her dad, right?
Yeah, it's just Nancy calling her
Okay.
dad. Did you think she felt Lucy though? Because she smiled right before she said yes.
Oh, I don't know. She kind of was just like not really paying the ghosts any mind in this episode. I felt like
She had that like long dramatic pause, like before she said, yes, I'll accept the charges. And isn't that the moment then Lucy got sucked out the door as I'm like, yep, Nancy, you did the right
that was
thing.
a really long dramatic pause. I was like, Nancy, girl, you gotta they're gonna disconnect the call. You gotta make a choice.
So no, there's no cliffhangers. I don't know. Really going into episode 11, kind of blind. There's I don't really know what's next because this was a very contained episode. It was another contained one.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've said this so much. I sound like a broken record at this point. It managed to make its standalone episodes tie into the story really well, in that it never feels like a villain of the week or anything like that. Because yes, Nancy nearly died in this episode. So first of all, there's something really major. She addressed a lot of her own trauma, like she did in the previous episode. So again, that's something really major. But even the smallest thing, like the fact is that she knows now that Tiffany was poisoned, and that it was the same poison that this serial killer has been using, but the serial killer wasn't the one behind it. So I feel like we did get some important things, mini cliffhangers to take into the overall story, even if the episode didn't end on a huge jaw-dropping one.
That's true. And there's the vase that Ryan has, which I couldn't really see the surface of it. I was like, can I use any type of 7th grade knowledge about like Greek mythology? What is
you're like, come on, Push, come on, world history.
Yes. But another great episode of Nancy Drew in the books for us. Cannot wait to watch episode 11. We're getting up there.
Season 1 will be done in no time.
For sure. And then the last thing for what we're watching is I have a spoiler-free review to give for All American Season 5. It is the Christmas episode. I believe it's their first.
Nice.
Oh, wow. The premiere?
Yeah. I saw that in the trailer and I was like, oh, we really doing Christmas. I'm here for that. What are we doing with Christmas?
Christmas in the fall. I'm into it.
I know, right? Well, I guess it works because they're in LA, so it's not cold.
Is that where the season 4 left off? Was like
no, so this does a time jump. It's 6 weeks later, which means that people have had time to sit in the finale drama and the events that happened. I cannot say how anything works out, but I will say it's a very intriguing episode for a premiere because it is going headfirst into a lot of the issues that were brushed up. And I know the Simone fans, the Simone and Jordan fans are like waiting to see what happens now that she's back home in town to notice Jordan and Layla. Y'all are going to be intrigued by some of the scenes. It's an interesting time for I don't want to call it a triangle because Simone and Jordan did end their relationship last season, but it's still an interesting time as everyone figures out their feelings. As for Spencer and Olivia, the angst that we had at the end of the finale because she's digging into his coach at Golden Angeles University. The angst is still there. We have not moved past. Have you seen the trailer? Just be prepared. I can't say anything else other than that. But like y'all felt angsty at the end, you're gonna feel angsty again. Is what it is. We are in that point of the relationship. And that makes sense because it's season 5. They got together, I believe, or the seeds were planted in season 3. And I think they got together in season 3. So we are due for some heartache and some not knowing what we're doing. How are we going forward? Like, why are you investigating my coach when you should not be investigating my coach? Can you do anything else? And the answer is no. What else happened? I like that it's a Christmas episode, though. I like that this is everybody on break right before the semester starts again. So because it feels like a lull between like the spike of drama that you'll get during the spring semester. It also, if you don't watch All American Homecoming, you're going to want to tune into All American Homecoming's premiere too, because Spencer is crossing over into that premiere. So everything, if you want to know what happens next out of everything that happened in All American. Some of that I'm sure is going to pop up in the All American Homecoming season 2 premiere. Now, what I want to know desperately is why Jordan punches Damon in the face in the All American Homecoming premiere. I'm like, did he say something slick? Like, what are you doing? Because Simone and Damon aren't together. It's very clear he's with Thea. So, like, why is Jordan? And Jordan and Simone aren't together. So why is Jordan mad? What is happening?
I need to catch up on Homecoming.
You do, because
the clock is ticking for me, and I need to do it soon.
Or just like read a recap and jump right in. You can figure out the drama on the premiere. One thing that I did want from last season that seems like it's going to be happening based on the trailer for the season 2, Nate gets a love interest, or that's a romance of some kind that's happening. If not, then she is just, kicking it with somebody. But I saw that elevator shot and she reapplied her lip gloss and went about her business. So I was like, who is this man?
Good for her.
Good for her. I'm happy. She was Laura Ivy King, they were bumped up to a series regular. So we should be getting more of Nate. I have skipped on past All American Season 5 premieres. That is not an indicator that it's not a good episode. It's a fantastic episode. It's just I really cannot talk about it other than it's fantastic. And there are a lot of character beats that are interesting and work well for the characters where they are.
I love that they're starting the season with Christmas, because I feel like for so long, so many of these broadcast shows that revolve around teens or young adults, they make the calendar match where the story is. So like if the season starts, it has to be the end of summer, the beginning of school. When the season ends, it has to be school's out for summer. And while that's fine, it's kind of cool to see them mix it up and just start from different places where drama exists that we don't usually get to see.
That worked really well for the longer seasons, where obviously they'd start in September when the school year started. If you'd be lucky, the mid-season finale would probably be around Christmas, and then the second half of the season would head towards the next summer. But in this day and age of maybe shorter seasons and whatever, it's nice to see them experimenting with not just the format, but the storytelling and the times of year the characters are in as well. I think it leaves things open for more exploration of different stories as well.
Yeah, listen, time is an illusion. Christmas doesn't have to happen in December on TV.
This is very true.
And for the CW, it'll be happening in October.
Love to see it.
Yes, All American Season 5 premieres Monday, October 10th at 8 p.m. ET. Be there, sit down, get settled, stay for the 2-hour block with All American Homecoming Season 2. She needs those numbers. Watch live. And that's it. That's it for this pod. Is it a mini pod? It's a mini pod. We did it. I'm so proud of us.
We did it.
We did it. Does anyone else hear like the what is the word? Oh, I can't remember the word, but the Dora thing after she says we did it, and then they say a phrase in Spanish. I think I just can't remember the phrases.
No.
No.
I don't remember.
I do.
Oh, God. Okay, we'll end there. We'll end on Dora. So we are the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Bye, y'all.